Tonight we're talking about the four relational levers. So for me, a lever, so Archimedes said that if you give me a lever long enough, I can move the world. So levers are things that can change a situation.
What's it up to?
So tonight we're going to talk about the four relational levers, the levers that will have the most impact on a relationship. So in the breakout rooms, you were discussing what have you seen work in relationships, in fixing relationships, and what have you seen not work in what people do when they try to fix a relationship that's going wrong. Anyone have anything interesting or anything that they would like to share?
We didn't so I'll say that I mean I don't think we kind of got that far. We were talking about things. We did briefly talk about like the attachment styles, but one thing I did say was that instead of fixing things, I have a tendency to run away because I might think it's me. I might think I've messed up in one or two ways, and I just go right. I'm just going to end it. Okay.
Do you mind me asking, when you say in one of two ways, do you mind me asking a little bit more about what those two ways are?
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to explain, but in some way I'll get in my head, even though someone might seem to like me, I don't think they do.
Yeah.
I've only just started realizing this lately because I've tried to do it in the past, even like a year or two ago, logged down. Like maybe people I've been on a couple of dates with, or it's been a couple of months, and then I kept not knowing where I kept going wrong. I kept going, well, he did this and he did that, and I was like, there must be something I'm doing, and I couldn't see what it was, but it is that I just go, do you know what, I don't think I want to do this anymore, and it's easier, and as soon as I break it off, I get this relief, and I'm free, and nobody can hurt me, I guess.
Yeah. So there's kind of an anxiety, and if you switch the person, it's easier. So like you'll just get into a relationship with someone else.
Well, no, I mean, like, I will give it time, and I am quite happy on my own. But then, yeah, when I go, right, let's try again. Yeah, it can sometimes it can be a matter of weeks, or sometimes it's about 2 or 3 months. It tends to be about 2 or 3 months, and something happens around there where I'm like, it's before it starts getting serious, isn't it? So I might go, oh, I like this person, but then before the actual feelings come in, I won't let that happen.
Yeah. Okay, and it sounds like you're aware, you've obviously looked into attachment styles and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't believe in for ages because when I look mine up, I'm the fearful avoidant, which is the worst of them all, isn't it? So I mean, obviously there are things from childhood, and yeah, I have looked into all that. I was working on the childhood stuff for years, but didn't realize how. I didn't think it was affecting my relationships because I thought I had a hold on that bit, and I thought I am good at communicating, but I'm not. And sometimes I will, just to say, like, I'll try and bring it up, but then when we start actually having a conversation, I just freeze and freak out. So I do try and push myself and put myself in some uncomfortable positions. But then I feel like I freaked them out because they're like, oh my God, like, just be okay, calm down.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anything either you've experienced or something that you see in someone else? If I look like I'm winking madly, it's because I've got conjunctivitis, so I'm just struggling to keep my eye open. For me, it was one situation where the person was accusing something I did. And I know I didn't, but somehow I just felt it. It's like, try to picture me for something, or they try to put me in one box, you know? And I just literally felt no freedom after. And I just said, that's not gonna work for me. They accept me who I am, and not to try to change me, but the person I felt it every single time try to change me. I don't know, that's my came because I was a little bit trying them as well, or I'd been pictured them like
how they could be rather than who they are.
Yeah, so there's an image for someone to live up to and for you to live up to for them, rather than the reality. What about in examples that you've seen of other people? Is there anything you like? Often it's much easier to see with someone else, and you see them, and you can kind of like everyone sees someone making the same mistake, but they themselves don't see it.
Well, definitely I am detaching time to time from the people, so I really need a lot of me time. And I know that sometimes can be scary for other people because they feel I'm disconnecting from them. But I just need it because I'm just simply introvert. And I got enough, talking with people in my job. So when I can have a little free time, I like to really just disconnect it because I'm managing people. So I really don't need somebody to tell me what to do in my free time. Because if somebody does that, I'm just simply saying, look, we not belongs to each other. Thank you. Maybe the person want to correct and help me, but in unconscious level, they make me feel like they want to change. And I don't know if because of my job, I might do that as well. I just can't see this way, but maybe that's the reality.
I think there is something to be said about trying to resolve a matter by having discussions, and each party, as far as possible, putting out what their feelings are, what they think the issue is, give their side of the story. But I have seen with a number of my friends where they get to that point, and then it's the what next. How do you resolve the issues that you have put on the table, and go forward from there, and make that stick? Because I find that sometimes we just say, all right, okay, if that's what you say, all right, okay. And, you just, because you're tired of arguing, or you're tired of trying to get something resolved, and you just give in and you say, all right, I'll go along with it and we'll try. But it's not sustainable, because the effort that you put in untangling the issue, maybe you have just exhausted all of the possibilities of energy that you have, or you just don't have the tools or the understanding to come up with a workable solution that will help you to go beyond the issue, or beyond the issue. I find that sometimes we tend to just say everything's okay, when really it's not okay, but we're trying to make it okay by saying it's okay. And we really have not dug into the foundations of all of the issues that we need to address. And in other words, we are putting a paintbrush over it and, covering it up. It looks nice, but the mess is still underneath there. So I think that there is a lot to be said about, it's one thing about unraveling and unpicking things, but it's to find the appropriate solution and to work towards it. And also the recognition that even though you may have come to a point where you're agreed on that you want it to work, that does not solve the problem. If it took 10 years to build the problem, it may take 3, 4, 5 to get you to a place where you're able to say that you have, you have really come through that storm. But we don't think like that. I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Errol?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, with my experience, I suppose, don't know that we tried to resolve the problem. I mean, I did try to resolve the problem, but I didn't know what the problem was. And I don't think she knew what the problem was either.
Yeah,
because
finally.
whatever she came up with, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me. So if I try to
Yeah.
drill into it and say, well, what does it mean exactly? Then there was no explanation, you know. But I think through that journey, and it is quite unsettling because mine was a long, I don't know, 23 years, if that is long, marriage with 3 kids. So you kind of think, you know, what is the problem? If there was no obvious stuff, you know, there was no adultery, there was no violence or psychological issues or money problems or anything like that. So, you know, what was the issue? But I think through that, what I started realizing early on was to almost accept the inevitable, and I don't know whether that's the right thing to do or not, but almost accept the inevitable that I cannot change or control somebody else.
Yeah.
If that's what they want to do, I can't change it. I have to accept it. And so only thing I can do is try and behave as,
Yeah.
I suppose, as correctly as I can, given that I'm also emotionally compromised at that point, and try and do the right thing as best as I can. And that was the only thing that I can look back on it nowadays and say that I try to say, look, you know, this is where I am emotionally, this is where I'm going to be, and I can see you are kind of confused or whatever. And she was confused at one point because she was kind of saying, let's not get divorced. And then it was, oh no, let's do get divorced. It's like, well, what do you want? You know, so I suppose the key thing for me was not so much that is there a problem, whatever isn't a problem, because we can't solve all the problems. And we are dealing with another human being, who may have a complicated history, some of which we may or may not have quite realized. And I think if you try and somehow get to the bottom of all that and fix all that, you can't. So you have to kind of either be there, be honest and truthful about where you are and how far you can go. And if they can make amends or come along with you, then great. If not, then you're going to have to accept that perhaps you have to part ways. And just to sort of add to that, I mean, I know a couple quite well, and his wife has got various addictions, and some of them are, I think, and it all stems from childhood, and it's quite severe. And he didn't know up until recent, I think about 2-3 years ago. And he has kind of stayed the course. I mean, they're still married, just about, I think. And the issue there is that they're working through it together. She has now realized that she's got this problem. I mean, she's got all sorts of addictions, including sex addiction. And it's realizing it and working through it through a program of, I don't know, they call it steps, but I don't know, this like 12 steps or something they have to work through. And it's a self-reflection kind of program with some coaching along the way. So it's only then that they can kind of go back and look at their own issues and try and resolve them. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that if you got a couple, can a couple resolve complex psychological issues? No. You can only try and do the right thing, be there for the other person, be honest about where you are. And if you can both get some professional help, great. If you can't, then I think you kind of decide that.
That was good. There's a lot in there. which I think hopefully we'll get round to unpicking some of it later. Janusz.
Yeah, for me now, when Era was saying, a couple of things actually make sense. And one of them, I think it's quite often, I tend to be as well, listen to reply for people. I'll tend to understand more deeper what is actually the root of cause and get more deeper. And usually at the 5th level, you get actually kind of answer where actually my closer to the root of cause. Because first 2 things, it's just not really make sense. It's like I get accused I'm cheating. And I know sometimes because I'm working with a lot of women and I got a lot of women friends, and that can make insecure some ladies. But is that really my faultiness? The person feel insecure? Or just simply because it's had in past experience? And I know that sometimes can make them feel like that. And I do know also I got my own speed how I open up. And sometimes for some people that's very slow. I mean really slow. And not all of them will accept that kind of speed. And they will just say, you not love me. And I'm like, how they know that? They don't even know what I feel. We don't even know sometimes what we really need. Because when we're saying we need freedom, it's not always what we need freedom. It's just we're not inspired. We just need some kind of different visions to know which way we can go. We actually need a lead. And we as the humans, we're not really good at what we're good at it. It's just, we never find the root of cause. We always will try, but we'll never.
Okay, thank you. Errol, you got?
Sorry, we kind of going to have conversation by proxy here with Janusz now. But what I wanted to kind of point out there, and I'm sure this isn't the case, Janusz, but just to clarify what you're saying about others getting jealous, is because funny enough, I've had this conversation with a good friend of mine that I see often, and we go out walking and all that. She's like my sister and so on. But and she said to me one day, you know, if you do meet somebody, does that mean you're never going to talk to me anymore, sort of thing? And the thing is that here is the thing: if I was, let's say, serious with somebody, and we were going out, and I've never told her about this other lady, and then suddenly I said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm taking such and such out tomorrow night." She might kind of feel, hang on a minute, who is this? Where does this one come from? Whereas if on the other hand, I introduce them, they kind of get to know each other, so they can see that the other person, you know, they can see what the relationship is like, introduce them to that, and they can see it's just a friendship. And, you know, maybe all 3 of us go out, sort of thing. So that way, you kind of introduce them into my circle of friends, and they can see those people. If I, just what I mean? So there are certain, I suppose, social rules that you wouldn't go out with that friend. Now, there may very well be the situation where, say, I assume we are not living together at the moment because the relationship isn't at that stage, but they kind of know each other. And okay, I might have gone for a walk with her and come back. Presumably that will be acceptable because she knows, and there are no secrets. So I suppose sometimes, without realizing, it may be that we do things with innocence, but because the other person isn't aware of the relationship, because they haven't been there from the beginning, so they don't really know, as humans, they can sometimes assume the worst, or it may be that it's tainted by their previous history as well.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, you?
Errol, you are, I think what you are describing is a situation where people are comfortable with themselves. And yeah. And with that level of comfort, then there is room for accommodation of different, relationships, different connections, etc. And having faith in the connection that you have with the main person. If both people have that understanding, then it works. If you get a situation wherein there is one person who thinks that way and the other party is not that confident, then there are issues. And you will find in some instances that a third party can get blamed for something that is really not any of their doing. It's within the relationship itself, but the third party is a convenient person or entity to lodge the fault on. You spend so much time with her or him or what have you, that kind of thing, and what is it that you're talking about so much, and why do you have to be at his house or her house, and blah 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 blah, the usual stuff. So I think, but on the other hand, you're bringing up an important thing about people as individuals. We come with our past associations, our present friendships, our relationships with our families, in-laws, etc., etc. Anybody who meets us, they're meeting us with all of those connections. And it is, how do we introduce them to those connections, and how do we give them comfort to see that there are no undercurrents, nothing to be mistrustful about any of those connections with, X and Y and so forth. My dearest friend is a man, and he's one of my dearest friends. He's a man, and I've known him since I was probably about 14, 15, from high school, okay? And I never give him up for anybody. And there is no sex or no amor. I mean, we tease each other, but there's nothing, it's, from we were probably about, when I was about 18, we sorted that matter out, and there's nothing going on here, and it's not going to be. So, and we are the best of friends. And if I have a problem, I will call him. Actually, there are two men like that in my life. If I have a problem, I can call them, and I know that I can depend on them. If I meet somebody who is not comfortable with that and jealous of those two people in my life, then to me, that's a red flag, because any other connections also could fall foul of his insecurity, and he'll never be comfortable with me. So he won't get the best out of the relationship either, because he'll always be insecure and feeling not content.
Okay, thank you. Errol?
Yeah, so for me, the key bit that Sandra said is the bit where how we go about introducing the connections. And I think that kind of, because that's exactly what I was going on about. So it wasn't, because it's a continuum, yeah. On the one hand, you've got total security in yourself and, in the other person, and then total insecurity, and none of those things are kind of, so everybody is somewhere in between. And yes, you will get some people who are so, I guess, insecure in themselves and everything else around them, perhaps due to history, that they do not want the other partner to have any other communication or connection, and that can become over jealousy, and that is not going to be a healthy relationship anyway. And then you've got the situation where it's so perhaps secure that it doesn't care, open marriage maybe. So none of those things are going to be a strong bond. But I think what I'm talking about is taking care or understanding the other person and looking to introduce you, the people around you, to them so they can appreciate the relationship you have. So Sandra meets the man of her dreams, and he, you know, and as they start talking, she says, well, you know, I got these guys I talk to, and, you know, she introduced them to him, and they can see that, you know, these are, you know, lovely men, and, you know, they're old men, and actually it's a very friendly, benign conversation. I think in time he can get to appreciate them. In fact, he might end up becoming friends with them himself. So it's that kind of a relationship that I was thinking about. And yes, it does require a bit of maturity and I suppose the strength of character in yourself as well, to kind of steady yourself and not be over possessive of the other person. But these things are all a balance, because how far, at what point do you say it's over possessive, and at what point do you say you don't really even care what they do? Do you see? So if you, there are two extremes. So healthy bit is going to be in the middle, where it works for both parties. And all I'm saying, I suppose, is that you wouldn't want your other half suddenly going out with somebody of the opposite sex, for argument's sake, and you don't know anything about it, that kind of unsettle you. Whereas if you are introduced to them in a careful way, and you understand the relationship, then them seeing those other people may potentially be acceptable, because they understand the situation. If they don't, then they will make up their own minds, and they can be usually quite extreme and negative.
Comes down to who it is, because I'm interested. There's this book, The Dangerous Passion, and it's about jealousy, and it talks about people who are jealous, and they go through counselling. Like there's research done on people who've gone through counselling, and it's through one partner's jealousy, and they go through counselling, and it seems to be irrational jealousy, that they're jealous of this other person, they're jealous of this, and these people receive counselling for their jealousy, and in 63% of cases there was something to be jealous of that later turned out. So the issue is not blanket trust, mistrust, but I think it comes down to, and I think Janos, and maybe Sandra all implied this concept of digging deeper, and I think a lot of it is about. So I'm gonna share a few ideas I have to frame the rest of the discussion. And I think then we'll be able to dig in more to it. But I think some of those issues are like the real reason we don't trust is because there is a cost to trusting naively, and trust is earned. Trust is where it's valid, and the problem is, if we can universally trust, then we can trust every instance. But as soon as some people abuse the trust, then there is an issue of, do we trust, don't we trust? And it comes down to, there's lots of research in psychology, like prisoner's dilemma, and there's the concept of the tragedy of the commons, whereby like the old common ground used to be for so anyone could graze their cattle, but as we've seen in the petrol crisis, the toilet roll crisis, all of these things where people think there's scarcity, they think I've got to go in and grab mine, and so they do that, and that means that's the tragedy of the commons, that there was no commons to graze on because of that abuse, and it's that abuse is driven by the fear that someone else is going to get in there first. And I think the main thing, so I see lots of people in lots of relationships, and I talk to lots of people, and I see their understanding of relationships. And the biggest issue I think people have with relationships is they think that relationships are different than every other field. Relationships are no different than the fields of money, the fields of business, the fields of any other like health, education. They're all run on the same dynamics. But people have this idea that relationships are special. And because they're special, you should treat them differently. So, for example, often people get into a relationship quickly, and so often, because there's kind of like a whole lot of shame, this is my view, and whether it's biased or not, I think a lot of women feel shame around sex, and a lot of women feel that they have to be in a relationship to have sex, or they need to feel safe and have that security. And so their conceptualization of what a relationship is comes, where I would see, impartially too early. And because the relationship has gone to that physical level, it feels like it's as emotionally intimate as it is physically. And because of that, they feel like a lot of women have said to me, well, yeah, you're in a relationship, you've got to trust, but you don't trust blindly. And I think what's happening is they trust blindly, and so they trust the wrong people. So trust is something that has to be earned, and it has to match the person that you're giving the trust to. So I really had, coming into this, I really have about four frames of what I see that people normally do. And the first one, like at the very beginning of my journey into this, into people and how people worked, was it came about because I opened up a gym. And about 6 months in, I realized I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd set up all with like loans and grants and things. And so 6 months in, I was homeless. I was 60 grand in debt, and I was ill. And so I realized that I didn't know how to market, but I figured if I got the best product, and I realized that we were focusing on people who were new to a gym. So we made it really very comfortable for people. And so these were new people. And the real problem that I was trying to solve was, why don't people stick to their exercise or diet? And so I trained in therapy. And so when people would come and buy a gym membership, I was giving them therapy. But what it did was, it made me understand what drove people. And the reason why I found a lot of people stick to something for about 3 months and then they give up is because they've got a problem that's bothering them. And about 80% of the time, it's a relationship problem. They think their partner's cheating, so they feel they need to be in better shape. They're losing interest in the relationship and they're thinking about dating again, so they want to get in shape. So all of these kind of issues bother them enough to start a new diet and start a new exercise routine. But in about 3 months, the problem had resolved itself, and so they didn't have the motivation to keep going. So it was a reaction to a problem. So I think a lot of people feel shame. A lot of people feel that it's a problem of them. They feel like if the other person seems to be losing interest, I mustn't be attractive enough. And so they'll go for a makeover. They'll try and lose weight. They'll change their hairstyle, or if they've got hair, and the idea is that a sense of shame that I'm not good enough and I need to be better. And if I'm better, then they'll love me more. And then the other one is blame, is that they'll try to change the partner. So they'll either try and change the partner they have by nagging them, or trying to say, like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Or they'll literally change the partner, as in, okay, enough of that relationship, I need to be someone else. If they're not doing that, they're not the one. And therefore, I need to find my one. So it's either you need to be better, they need to be better. And then there is trying to change the relationship. So you try and change the dynamics, and it might be that you go to counseling, you try and relate differently, you try and like you might learn something like nonviolent communication or some communication or something. And so that's like trying to change the relationship. And some people try to change the environment. And so things aren't going so well, and so they'll have a special holiday and they'll splash out like 10 grand holiday so that there's just them and it's this perfect environment, and they think, well, we'll capture this spark. Or they'll move to a new house or in some way try and change the environment, thinking that that will change the relationship. One of the big problems is that we always so, for example, we always think we need to be better, or we need better than we are. So, for example, people look for unconditional love. And yet, when researchers have tried to study agapic love, people who give unconditional love, they had to abandon the research because they couldn't find enough people. So the people who are searching for that kind of unconditional love are looking for something that doesn't really exist. It's like 1 in a million. And so your chances of success is like having a lottery ticket. So relationships really need to be based on what we have. Like, we need to work with what we have rather than what we wish there was. You see, I think if you look at like productivity, people go look for productivity because they say they don't have enough time. And the illusion is always, right, how can we pack more into less time? But it's really, we only have so much time. We can only do so much. It's a matter of prioritization. And it's because our thinking is flawed in that we're trying to do too much with what we have. And it's more about what can we do and what should we do in this time. In money, probably the biggest problem is like credit card debt, which is really that we're trying to have more in less. So it's more about trying to not prioritizing our budget, not prioritizing what we spend within the budget. So with relationships, I think most people think it's about who. So what I see when people are dating is they have this big checklist. It's got to be this, got to be this, got to be this, got to be this. And what is more important in the relationship is how the relationship works, the dynamics of the relationship, rather than who it's with. And it's never going to be like this magical person it's all going to be right with. It's about how you structure a relationship and how you relate. So I look at football, and as a Liverpool supporter, it gives me great pleasure to see the terror, the situation of Manchester United. And if you look at Manchester United, they've had the best managers since Alex Ferguson. They've had some of the best managers. They've got the best players, and yet they can't get it to work as a team. And England, we've had so many great teams, so many great managers who achieved everything, and yet as a country, we haven't won anything since 1966, and there's no way that we should have gone that long. So sometimes it's about the dynamics of how we relate. So like if you're looking, it's a management issue. It's how you get it all to work together. I mean, if you look at Leicester, how can Leicester win the Premier League and like Man United?
Rob, they trust their people. Simply it is. Remember when was one of the team in Spain. They sold all their players, whichever players they didn't need it in the football. They literally they literally been borrowed for that team. I think was Atletico Madrid, yes. And they literally, the team players, which nobody really needed, all the big teams, they give away for free basically for a year. And they won the European Cup, yeah?
Mm.
Why? Because they trust their team. You
Yeah.
give a trust for the people. You're not expecting trust, you're giving. When you're giving, you already having, so you will receive back. The problem people want to get every single time, they just takers. You got two type of people, one giver, one takers. If you continuously just giving and others just taking, forget about, emotionally empty. If you got the takers and not really start learning to giving, again losing. In the end of the day, I believe you giving, and literally when others as well start giving, that's when you receive, and everybody feel happy, because we as the human, we feel good to do good things.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. It's exactly the opposite of the dynamics of the tragedy of the commons. When we trust other people, when we give, then others reciprocate. But it comes from a conceptualization that other people are good, as opposed to other people are going to grab everything.
And they become their best, honestly.
Mm.
If you give that trust for the people, they show their best. You just need to stand up next to them, even if they fail.
I think if you look at the great football teams, well, not necessarily great football teams, but the football teams that have achieved, when you look at Nottingham Forest to have won, was it 2 European leagues or two? Yeah, two. I think it was 2 European Cups. Celtic won in the 60s with a team completely comprised of, I think, of a 10-mile radius of Glasgow, of the wherever the ground Parkhead. Yeah, and I think companies that have a better culture are more effective. Iril got something to say.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to have something that doesn't have football in it, so if that's all right. So what I think what you were saying was that
Good.
what's important to understand is how the two people will affect each other in a relationship, and what that relationship might look like because of their character and because of their own character and compatibilities and clashes and things like that, I guess. And to try and figure out whether that would be a good or a bad relationship. I appreciate that. But I also think, well, that is true, because you are never going to find the perfect one and all the rest of it. And, you know, that's all nonsense anyway. There are still presumably going to be certain traits that you look for.
Hello.
I mean, for example, my middle name is Piss Taker. So, you know, if I am going to be with somebody who cannot, you know, it doesn't like bantering, it's not really going to work out very well, or it's got a solemn face. Doesn't matter how she feels internally. I mean, if she is good at taking the Mickey and receiving it and giving it and all that, then we'll get along a lot better than somebody who doesn't like to mess around. And I'm not saying that I mess around from dawn till dusk. You know, obviously there are times when I don't, but I like a light-hearted view of things, and just, you know, even when things are bad, you know, trying to just lighten up the mood a little bit now and again, within reason. So, just what I mean, as some people, they are very prim and proper and okay, and sort of like maybe going back to your stereotypical 40s or 30s, whereas I would find that very stifling for myself, for example. Which, to the unknowns of some of my dance partners, I don't like the waltz, because I find it very, gotta be, you know. So it's just what I mean. Whereas I like things like bachata because it's more playful. That's more my character. That's more like my character than being very. I can be prim and proper if I have to
Your mind
be,
keeps kind of.
but I wouldn't want to have it like a lifestyle. And I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm saying that is not me.
Mm.
And so coming back to what you're saying, yes, of course, you have to see whether that person brings the best out of you or the worst out of you. But you got to presumably have a minimum set of, they've got to be like this for it to work as a minimum, because I know what I am. Because otherwise it's not going to work anyway.
Mm.
You see?
Yeah. No,
So,
I think there is spectrums of people that you'll really resonate with and people that you really won't resonate with. What I'm saying is within, it doesn't need to be the perfect one. It can be within a range, and within that range, it's then how you relate. Something that I did point out is actually, it was you were saying earlier, and I think that leaving a relationship is always an option. You didn't explicitly say that, but that was
that's right.
and yeah,
That's right.
and when we get into the 4 levers, I think that is one of them. Janusz.
I think you quite nicely described that, what I feel so many people having this idea of ideal relationship. And if you will not work like that, that's not good enough. And it's saying, I deserve much better. And I'm like, so you actually not want me. You want something what is in your dream, created as the child, and you try to force me to in your box. And I think so many people living their life because they want to control their life. They learn like that in their childhood, and they don't see other way. They're not really in the present, like David Goleman said. 60% of our times we are daydreaming. We just literally watching what we want. We're not really experiencing what we have. We're not appreciating our time, what we got here. Instead, we're wasting time and energy in our head, and our life is just passing next to us.
Yeah, that leads me perfectly to the next bit. Is that I think there's a human desire. There's always, wherever we are, it's like you can see the vista, and then just beyond that is what we want. So we always want to be somewhere else. Wherever we are, we want to be somewhere else. And to get to there is a journey. And it's a bit like in The Hobbit, where Bilbo Baggins just doesn't want to take that journey. And none of us really do. Like Joseph Campbell always talks about the refusal of the call. And because that journey is scary. And so the illusions that we have are that we're going to win the lottery, which means, and winning the lottery is basically symbolic for not having to worry about money. And like the prince on the white charger, or the princess, is symbolic for not having to worry about relationships. But what they're really about is not really engaging with life. And where I think where that comes about most is when we're confused about something, because we don't know how to change things. So like if there's an interest that we have, or a calling that we have, or a career that we have, and we're really into it, we know you change this, you change this, you change this, and we know the foundational premise of what's going to happen. So, and I always find it easier to simplify things so that you can see like a small number. And I remember about 3 years ago, I tried to track all the different variables of what would change a relationship. And I think it was 89. It was like 89 different things. And then I boiled it down to simplify it into 4 basic areas that we can change. But I think the like Janusz was alluding to, I think basically it is what we really want is we want the world to change so that we don't have to change. And the problem with life is that everybody wants the world to change so that they don't have to change. And so when we get into a relationship, we're like, if you just change, I won't have to change and everything will be perfect. And they're like, if you just change. So maturity in relationship is recognizing that we're both going to have to change. And it's not, you've got to change for me. It's really that really we have a construction of ourselves, we have a construction of the relationship and a construction of the other person. And all of that construction is flawed. So our construction of ourselves is flawed because of what other people have told us from childhood, because of what we've misunderstood, because we felt inadequate, because of our fears and inadequacies. Our construction of them is flawed because they're not open enough with us, because what other people have acted like, because of our all of these other dynamics. And our construction of relationships is flawed because I think culturally we've been fed something that isn't true.
Yes.
Right.
Just to build on what you just said, and Janos, the whole framing of a relationship, each relationship has a different set of parameters that frame it, that give it context. And unfortunately, we many times bring all of the issues, all of the experiences of previous relationships into a new one, wherein it's uncharted territory. It is new, it is an empty landscape, so to speak. And what you are doing is filling in those blanks as you develop the relationship. But unfortunately, it's difficult when you've got these, I suppose it's like a chess game. We've got these squares already filled in from all of the baggage that we're carrying from before. And so we don't give space to creating new bits to fill those squares. And it is, to me, it's unlearning many of those behaviors that we developed in the past relationships, how we view our partners, how we view things that they do, how we view issues of space between us. And I'm talking, do I need to see my partner every day, every hour of, be texting him 20 times to make sure that he's where he says he is, etc., those kinds of things, which probably I may have learned with a devious previous partner, and I'm bringing that in, which of course, but it's the truth. And somebody who is not accustomed to being treated in that manner will have issues being comfortable having that kind of policing or oversight, for whatever kind word. And they may like the person genuinely, but they feel very restricted. They feel almost as though, claustrophobic in a sense. And I think part of what we have to learn to do is to unshackle ourselves from the previous experiences. As they say, don't take another, what I can't remember the same paintbrush to paint everybody. Right. So it's having that consciousness when we are embarking on a new experience. Because to me, a relationship starts with an experience before it becomes a relationship. So, but you have to clear that baggage and those claws that we tend to have to get into a person, because we are predefining the relationship before it has even started.
Yeah,
I think that's the essence of what my roundabout thing was.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've always been struck by Michelangelo's comment or quote when he was asked about how did he create the statue David. Someone said to him, like, how did you create this beautiful statue? And he said, I didn't create it. I just took it. It was always there. The job of an artist is to take away the surplus. And I think, like I said, what's true in one area is true in another. And I think that that is the key to relationships. Is not it's not so much like people think that they have to go on this course and they need to learn this and they need to learn this and they need to learn this, and that's what feels overwhelming and confusing, because there's so many different things. But really, it's about what, like a problem is held in place. So I just want to run through these 4 levers before we get to 8:30, so everyone's so we've covered the main issue and then we can discuss it. So I'm just going to share this. So what normally happens in a relationship is it starts off about here and then it just kind of goes down. And so I want to talk about what really happens is this is the point of conflict. And what normally happens is that conflict isn't resolved and you just create more and more conflict until people stop talking, because when there's conflict, if the conflict isn't resolved, what's the point of talking? So they stop talking and they work on assumptions. And so it's all of these things that we've discussed. So a relationship starts when we talk. And when we talk is when we start to feel a connection. We start to feel like we understand someone, when we start to build a space between us, which is what a relationship is. But as we talk, initially our connection is about you're like me. And eventually there's going to come a point, and that point is where there's conflict and where there's a difference between us. And so for some relationships, some people are never going to get beyond that, and the relationship's going to die because that's when because you couldn't resolve the conflict. But if we do resolve the conflict, so as we resolve the conflict, and this is really resolution, and that resolution leads to more of a commitment. And then what happens is the relationship goes up to a higher level. So relationships break when the level of challenge means that they're unable to resolve the conflict. So again, you're going to have another level where some other conflict. So initially, this, like in the early days of dating, there's some kind of culture clash, or someone's really punctual and someone's really late, someone's really messy, some of these things are what cause the conflict. Later on, it's going to be something like how someone spends money, or how differences in where they want to live, differences in jobs, differences in finances, in sex, in children, these kind of things. But this is how a relationship really grows. And each level of this is a different level of connection. So each of these points is a problem. And a problem is held in place by, so each problem is really held in place by your construction of yourself, construction of the partner. And by construction, I mean the reality of who someone is different than your understanding of who they are. And so your image of them is different than the reality of them. And where the relationship gets stronger is because from this point of conflict is after the conflict is you start talking again. So conflict leads to connection. So when you, after having that conflict, you have to, the way that you have to get through a conflict is by understanding the other person at a deeper level. So at that deeper level, you've then got a different area of depth of connection. And so the relationship becomes stronger and able to cope with more challenge. And then once you've got from that connection, then you commit. And so when you're committing to the partner, there's a higher level of commitment, and so there's a higher level of trust and respect within the relationship. And then which means that you talk, and you start to talk again. And then as you talk at a deeper and deeper level, there's going to come another point of conflict. And your ability to get beyond that conflict is to change some of these things that are holding the problem in place. Because as Sandra talked about, a problem has been in there for a long time. I often say that when a couple meet, you can tell, not that you can tell, but the relationship is set already. It just has to play out, because what it's set in is in their ideas of how the relationship's going to work, in their idea of who the other person is, what they want. So there's what you want and the comfort zone of what you're willing to do. So if you're not going to change, your partner's not going to change, what you want is not going to change, and your comfort zone of what you're willing to do is not going to change, then you're stuck, because you've run out of levers to change. So the way I find helpful to look at it is the 4 levers are communication, because communication is the gateway to understanding of what we understand of another, conflict and how we resolve it, how we connect and how deeply we connect, and who we commit to. So we have the lever of who we give what and who we give our attention to and how much of, who and how deeply we connect to that person, how we deal with conflict, and how openly and transparently we communicate. And what really underpins all of these is our construct. So it's our construct of who we are, our construct of who our partner is, our construct of relationships, and our construct of conflict and problems. How we talk and listen determines how much we understand of the other person and how much we express and share of ourselves. Yeah, how we resolve conflict, how we bond and how deeply we connect, and how much we commit. Because when we don't commit, what we're doing is we're looking at other options. It's kind of like, if we're not committed to the relationship, then we're open to other options, and therefore what we're always going to do is we're going to compare our partner with other potential options. If we don't connect, then there isn't the trust and the respect there, and if we don't resolve conflict in a way that grows the relationship and grows us, then we stay stuck at the same level and we keep having the same problems. And if we don't talk, then we never really know what the real problem is. We keep having fights about the toilet seat being up and the toothpaste, when it's really about, I don't think you love me. I don't believe I can trust you. So there's just one other thing that I want to talk about, is that this problem is where we're stuck. And it's really what Einstein said. This is my understanding of what he said, that when a problem, that a solution has to happen at a higher level of thinking than the problem was occurred. And so relationships are really a journey of changing our conception of ourselves of our partner and of how relationships operate. Because life is a lifelong journey of realizing we're not who we think we are. You know, when I was 9, I was going to be the youngest ever England footballer, and I was going to be amazing. And maturity is recognizing that you're not everything. You can be something, but you can't be everything. An idealization of your partner is that your partner is not going to be amazing at everything. Your partner is going to be something that you choose, but they're not going to be the best DIYer, the most handsome, the richest, the most powerful, the most suave, smooth, funniest. And it's recognizing someone for who they are rather than your idealization of them. And relationships are not the fairy tale, but they are something real and something true and something worthwhile. Errol.
Sorry, Rob. You talked about the 4 levers, and I think I understood, but I don't think I understood your definition of the connection and commitment. So I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind just recapping that in a bit more simpler English for me.
Okay. So commitment is, what are you committed to? What ideas are you committed to? Who are you committed to? So commitment for me is about where you put your attention. It's, I choose this. I choose this person. I choose this idea. I choose this is what I want for a relationship. So does that make sense? It's where your it's about your attention.
Okay, when you say attention, because I thought by commitment you meant more like that somebody is almost like being stubborn is probably the wrong word, but you kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to give this relationship another chance, or I will stay the course. But that's not what you're saying, is it? You're simply saying that there is a focal point that you're concentrating on.
Yeah. The problem I see with that blind commitment is at some point you have to be realistic about, because you're continually changing your understanding of the partner. So your commitment should always be changing. You know, if you find they are a cheating, lying, stealing, abusive piece of shit, then your commitment level should change. But so, because I think every point where there's a conflict is a point to review and renew your understanding of the person. And so I think that lever of being able to, because when we commit blanketly, and we like the marriage vows, I don't believe. I believe in monogamous, strong, committed relationships, but I don't believe that you give a blanket commitment. I'm gonna, whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever happens, I'm gonna be with you, because people do change. And what if that person becomes abusive? What if that relationship is no longer aligned with what you really value in life? Then you've torn. So
are we saying then that whenever there's a conflict, you're reevaluating your commitment to the relationship and saying, does this effectively mean the end, or do we still carry on? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah, because I think the ability to have the choice of leave the relationship means that, for me, relational success is you navigating relationships. It's not one relationship that's going to last forever. That would be great if it is, but that does depend on the other person. This is where so many people are like, I'm not going to really work on relationships, because what if I meet someone and they haven't really worked on relationships? Then I'm stuck. And that's how a lot of people feel. And so a lot of people don't evolve relationally because they're so worried about the other person. Okay, well, if I do all this and I'm like this level of relational evolution and the other person's there, I'm stuck. And that's why I think you have to renew commitment, because the commitments we made 5 or 10 years ago, and we've taken for granted. And that's why other people in relationships are like, oh yeah, we're married. I don't need to make an effort because we're married. But commitment has to be a continual thing, because if you're not, because otherwise you're not really committed to it, you're committed to a habit. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Well,
I think what you're saying, Rob, forgive me, Errol, I'm just trying to clarify something, is that commitment requires conscious decision making, and that conscious decision making requires you to be analytical to some point of in terms of your assessment of what of the relationship. I don't mean adding one and one and one,
Yeah.
but what works for you and what is not working and what needs fixing or what needs improvement, or because for me, commitment means that I'm planning to, I'm staying the course. I'm consciously making the decision to try to stay the course. And I'm trying to, I'll put in the necessary effort to make it work.
Yeah.
That to me is commitment.
The key word that you said was consciously. It's conscious, and conscious means that it's not a decision you make once. It means and so at each point of conflict, there has to be a conscious. Okay, we're going to this new level, and we're both going there, and this is what the basis that we're working on. And so it's a renewal of the vows. At each problem should be a renewal of the vows and a deeper connection, because the connection is now based on a higher level. It's not based on you're like me. It's based on I respect and appreciate you as you are, and that's what I commit to. And each level that you get that level of consciousness and you commit to that next level of consciousness, you the commitment is greater. Does that, so it's yeah, because where a problem might come about is there are breaking points in relationships, and you might have someone might do something, or they might change as a person and have values that you completely disagree. And I'm not, and so it may be that you can't resolve that problem. You know, part of the problem is the comfort.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to stay in a relationship no matter what, of course. And I think what you're saying is you don't have to feel trapped in a relationship and you're staying because you feel you have to, because you said so, or you promised, or whatever, or you took marriage vows, that you can reevaluate. And if the relationship has changed enough, then it may be very well time to call it a day, depending on the circumstances, of course. I think that's what you're kind of saying. And when you have these conflicts, assuming they're large enough, you may have to reevaluate. Are you making a conscious decision to stay, or are you staying because of fear of leaving and I will be alone and all the rest of it? So are you staying for the right reasons, or are you staying because you feel pressured into staying, whether that's social pressure or your own perception of the reality? I think that's what you're saying in terms of commitment.
Yeah, the commitment is the last lever, because first of all, it's about you change the construction of your understanding so that you're able to resolve. But if you're not able to resolve, so if you can resolve it, and it basically means about your willingness to change, their willingness to change, and it's not change as a person, but it's change your construction. Because I think there's 3 levels. There's what we do, what we say, and what we think. And what we think is the primary, like the domino that determines what we say and what we do. And so the construction of who we are, who they are, what a relationship is where we're really going to resolve a problem. But what I'm saying is, where there's a problem that's serious enough to cause a relational break, if we can't change anything, then the only thing that we can do to feel good about the way we live and who we are, sometimes is to take away our commitment to the relationship.
Okay. And so what was connection? It's just understanding the other person at a deeper level, or just knowing them better? Is that what you meant by that?
Connection is, so commitment is to them. Connection is the dynamics between you, like the bond that you have. It's so that the most basic level of connection that people have, I think, is tribal, as you're like me. So because you're like me, and it's a shortcut. And I think when we look at all kinds of prejudice, it comes because you're not like me. And the deepest connection means I see you, like at the deepest level, I see who you are, I see your fears, I see your imperfections, I see where you feel shame, I see all the things that I don't like about you, but I still see humanity that I love about you. And I respect you for your strengths, for your weaknesses, for everything that you are.
So it's like Meet Joe Black. There's a film called Meet Joe Black. I don't know if you ever seen it.
I know it, but I can't really remember the story.
Okay.
I have seen it years
So,
ago.
anyway, there is one bit in there where the guy
Okay.
is asked what is love, what does it mean, and he says, well, it's like, he says, she knows the worst thing about me, and it's okay.
That's saying something.
So it's someone that you can bear your innermost secrets and
Oh,
soul to, and still feel safe, still feel seen, still feel supported, and still feel satisfied.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Janusz.
For me, more resonate like really a journey when you start with a car and the person sitting next to you, and time to time you swapping each other to make sure give enough rest for each other. So giving, actually sharing your baggage with the other person, let the other person a little bit connected through that baggage with you, and just how you evolve, you will get the traffic. Guess what? Is the question how you will react on it, because you can get pissed off. Oh, you went in the wrong road, or you can be, you know what? Let's enjoy what we got here, trees, the nature a little bit. Let's go out a little bit, just get the fresh air. And I think that's what these days we do missing quite often, to be really present, to be really there in the time and experience what we got. Because as the kids, that's what we do. Kids are just go there and wow, amazing, wow, it's how beautiful. Again, every single day it's a new things. More like a scientist goes out. But we as the adults, as Sandra said, we go with our prejudgment, and we all do that because we want to protect ourselves. But quite often what we do, we actually limiting ourselves, we self-sabotaging ourselves, because we keep searching for the happiness. But guess what? The happiness is there in front of your nose. Just open the eyes. Don't let your mind, like how somebody said, if you tell your mind to your eyes to search for white, it will search for white. But if you let your eyes just to search, we'll find so many beauty things, not just the white. And we'll remember, we'll experience it.
I think all of these things are really to lead to conscious presence. It's conscious choice. It's conscious experience. It's really about just being conscious. And I think so much of what we do is on autopilot. It's like Sandra said, it's all ingrained. It's all the things that we've always done because we're comfortable. And the relationship is a journey, and any journey is about going out of your comfort zone. Any prize that we want means a bit of an adventure. and a bit of a step into the unknown, and dealing with the fear.
But also one more thing, Rob, we should not forget the key for loving something is the absence of it. If you don't have absence of winter, you wouldn't love the summer. Or opposite. The reason why you do love your partner, because time to times you can disconnect it from it and you can reconnect again to remember why you start for it, why you love it, that person. But quite often we just so much want it connected. But time to times you need to disconnect a little bit and restart again. I love my job, but if I would not have every 3 to 6 months a little break, I would just hate it. Just hate it.
So my reaction to that is, for me, that's more about appreciation, whereas love is a constant. We can't appreciate if we don't have the opposite. But I think love is a constant. I don't know.
No, it's not, because your family as well. You love your family, but you need the time from them away. Otherwise, I could kill my mom sometimes, you know. It's just the way how she's, you know, like drama queen, you know. And I'm like, you know what? I need time off. Stop, please.
But the
Similar,
love
I
still,
think, with a partner, you know, because you will have something what you don't like on it, and that's okay. That's why you love it, actually, because it's different.
the love doesn't change. That's where I think I differ from what you're saying. The love doesn't change. The love is still there. What is changing is the behaviors that manifest the love. You're tired of being in the same space with this person and all the rest of it, but the love is still there, because even if you take a break, you come back home. And it's the love that makes you come back home.
Okay, maybe that's a little bit different way. You cautiously making a decision to stop at the peak, to have that roller coaster effect again, because quite often people let it to happening and after they never can recover. But sometimes you need to cautiously make that you know, when you love something, you need to have a stop. Otherwise it will eventually just get tiredness. And when you're making this cautiously, that's the key of the absence. That's how I can describe it.
So, I mean, I don't know, that doesn't resonate with me. To me, it sounds like, forgive me for saying it like this, so don't take it wrong way, but it sounds to me a bit of an immature to kind of say, unless I am devoid of something, I am incapable of understanding, appreciating, or seeing the value in something. Yes, it is true that there are times, say jobs and so on, as you give on the examples, you do need a break. And yes, kids can get on your nerves. I know it for sure. I've raised 3 and now I'm raising another one. So yes, you do need that break now and again. But there isn't about renewing your love. I mean, sometimes you need some personal space. You do need to grow. You do need to recharge your batteries. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs their own space. But I'm not sure that it has any impact on your appreciation or understanding of the other person, or even your feelings towards them. I don't love my kids any less just because I am just tired and I want to sit down myself and just, you know, relax my head, and I don't really want to have to deal with what he wants to deal with today, because it's not the most important thing. And that goes for my mom and everybody else as well. But it doesn't mean I don't appreciate them or I don't love them in any shape or form. I do. It's just that there are times when I need time for myself. And that's just me time, and everybody needs that, as they do. There are times when my kids just, you know, want to put something on and listen to their whatever they listen to, and it's their own me time. They don't want to talk to me, and it's not because they don't love me or appreciate me. They need that time. Everybody needs it. So I don't know. Either I haven't understood what you said, or
I think it's when we're tired, when we need something. So like as an introvert, I need my own space. And you can feel overcrowded and you just need like to be alone to think and to recapture. But I would say it's your energy level, and your energy level has to be a match for the love that you feel. So you can't appreciate that love unless you have that energy to be present. Whereas when you're tired and you're drained, I don't think it's necessarily that there isn't love. I think it's that you can't access it because you haven't got the energy to appreciate it. And so you're looking at the thing in a different way. Like when we're tired and we're grumpy, whatever we look at looks shit. But when we're happy and everything's great, we like most things look great. And so it's as much about our energy level. So I think for me, that's something slightly different, is that also, I mean, this is another lever, but it's the lever of the self, is that if you're drained, you need to look after yourself and you need to do whatever you need to do so that you're full, so that you function at the best. Because also what happens in relationships is people are so low. I think like 30s, early 40s are really hard times because you're so busy. Like if you've got kids, you've got work, you've got all these demands, you've got no time, no energy for yourself. And so couples are like grating on each other because they've got no time and energy. And I think that's it's not necessarily that there isn't love there, it's that they can't access an appreciation of the love. And some of this is hard because we all envisage it in different words, and words mean different things to different people, and we have different conceptualizations. And this is why like the levers of the communication are really about understanding what each person means, so that when someone says, like when your partner says this, what do they really mean? It's like the connection is knowing that instead of those broad brushstrokes, we know like the really fine detail of what they mean by what they're doing, rather than our assumptions. To go back to the question of what is connection at a lower level is they're doing this because of this. Connection at a higher level is, okay, I'm really interested, why did you do that, what did that mean? And it's understanding the person rather than assuming stuff about the person.
Janos, I'm trying to see if this may fit in with what you're saying, in that there is love. Both parties are fully appreciative of the love that's there between them. But as Rob is saying, the energy level is so low that the love is it's just something that's there. It's like, a duvet on a bed. It's there. You see it. It's there. But you need to find a way of actually making it become the centerpiece rather than the background. And maybe that's what you are alluding to, in that you bring it to the fore. In other words, it becomes a conscious part of your relationship rather than just being taken for granted. That's the term I'm looking for. It's there, it's taken for granted. You think it's there. You accept it, you acknowledge it, but it's just there. And so it's a reconnection and a refocusing to ensure. It's almost like reinvigorating the love.
Yeah, definitely. As Rob said, it's partly, it's there. It's somewhere, somehow you just don't feel it. And that's kind of coming through having that absence to refine it again. And when you refine it again, you refine it in a different way, in an evolved way. What I feel, I always been described myself like a phoenix. When I do have that stage, I go to my hatch, and hatch it. And during this process, I try to refine it, reconnect it with that, whatever I feel I lost. And if I can, it's great. If it's not, probably I would burn the house. And that's one of the danger. That's my dark side. But we all having that yin and yang, the brightness and the darkness. The question how we can handle it and how we can present it that to the other partner, and the other partner will actually okay with that. Not just accept it, it's okay with that.
The way that I think of it is, I think there's a spectrum of two things that are ever present. I think love is always ever present and fear is ever present. And it's how we feel is based on how much fear we have, because fear drags us down here. And when I listen to you in like how you envisage it, that burning up is the burning of fear, which how fear would be displayed in that way is anger, and that anger would burn, whereas that with less fear, that love would burn stronger.
So in other words, you need to manage your fears in order to preserve your love.
For me, the energy of life is love, and if we get rid of fear, so I look at like the energy of life is like, if you imagine a torch, that energy is love, and the emotion that we feel is like a kaleidoscope of emotions, and it's the extent to which we feel fear. So if we feel anger, it's fear, is that love being. So if we feel anger, if you ask, what am I afraid of? There's something that you're afraid of that's creating the anger. So different emotions are different levels of fear.
But anger, it's actually, sometimes it's pushed me to do things. It's when I reach the anger stage, it's actually, you know what? I'm gonna go and show everybody and myself I'm capable to do. I don't give up about what other people are think. So that's actually, it's already a courage level where I'm gonna be really do things.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way I first conceptualized this, I think, was Abraham Hicks, and they talk about the emotional scale, and they talk about fear, like despair being the lowest level, and then like different levels, and then anger, and the anger is the level where you first get energy. And I remember listening, and they were like, you can't jump from there to there, but you can get to there. You can feel some anger. And when you got anger, you got energy. When you got energy, you get moving. And then once you've got moving, then you can move past anger. It's just don't stay. You use each stage to go to the next stage. And I think like David Hawkins has brilliantly done on like a level of different emotions.
Definitely, I feel like that's what I said a couple of months ago. When I said for me, it's actually the pain. It's more kind of level where I can create like a catalyst, an energy, what it's make me to do. It's actually, you know, for me, pain, it's just more a signal. You know what? Get your ass off and do.
Any closing ideas before we've run over? So I was too ambitious in 8:30, but we went to 9. Any closing thoughts or questions or comments or ideas before we?
I am going to present you virtually with my latest blooms, Rob. Everybody else, my white phalaenopsis has bloomed. So happy New Year.
Beautiful.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, is my plant any better? I got told off last week.
It's looking alive, yes.
I've been watering it, so, and these two are the same plant, and yet one is much healthier, although that's looking a little bit unhealthy.
More sun get, you know?
Well, if I can change that.
I have a funny feeling that one has too much water in the bottom.
Which one?
The one that looks like it's dying. That looks like it doesn't have a drainage hole. So the
That's
roots are the rotting.
So literally you're saying, Sandra, we do it ourselves as well. Sometimes we drown ourselves in the water. Thank you.
Too much-
We
too
make
much
ourselves
water.
die, yeah? Off you go.
Okay, so that's my job for the week then, to try and revive that plant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here, for sharing, and for contributing. Have a great week.